all eyes on Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, as Anthony Joshua goes in against his fellow Francis Ngannou. And of course, a whole bunch of fights on the undercard, all of big interest to us, one way or t'other. And of course, later, after this bout of fighting over in Saudi, we're going to be looking at Fury going in against Usyk. Anyway, that's a bit further down the line. For the moment, we are concentrating on what's going on tomorrow in Saudi, amongst other things. Zhili Zhang up against Joseph Parker for one. And the three of us have become the four of us, because top trainer and the trainer of Daniel Dubois, Don Charles, joins us live here in studio. Don, good afternoon to you, my friend.
Good afternoon, Jim.
Not for the first time, all eyes on Saudi. Are your eyes on Saudi? Are you as intrigued as everybody seems to be as to whether or not Ngannou can rock Anthony Joshua tomorrow over there?
Most definitely. My eyes are always on the heavyweight division. Basically, we're getting treated quite regularly. These fights are coming fast and furious. And obviously the fight tomorrow between Ngannou and Joshua, a very intriguing fight.
Yeah, we heard Dan Hardy who called it for Ngannou. I think that maybe surprised Spencer. I'm not so sure about Simon. What do you think? I mean, Dan Hardy, of course, is a former MMA fighter, knows everything that goes on in that sport, but he takes his man to break down Joshua.
Well, most definitely, if that's his opinion. We all have opinions, and I agree to differ. No, my opinion is that Joshua will be victorious. There are ways he has to approach the fight in order to be victorious.
Don, you know the MMA world quite well. You trained Roger Gracie as well, so he come over and started training, doing that discipline, UFC, MMA, into boxing. So you know what the transition is. You know how it's made. What did you make of Ngannou's performance against Tyson Fury? Was it that Tyson Fury underprepared, or was Ngannou better than what he's given credit for going into that fight?
Both. Right. Tyson, in my opinion, was underprepared, and Ngannou was better than we all thought. And I, for one, I got it wrong. I totally got it wrong, because I said that I just couldn't see how Ngannou would negate his way into range to be able to land a punch on Fury, who's known to be really awkward, and he did it with ease.
Well, you saying that then, Tyson Fury is this unpredictable character. He sets the traps, feints all the time, and he's very unpredictable, quite hard to get to. Anthony Joshua's not that guy. So if Ngannou can get to Fury, that would then say that at some point Joshua's going to have to trade with Ngannou as well.
At some point, yeah. I've looked at that fight, and so there's so many scenarios. And if you could pick a coach for Joshua for this fight, it would be that of Ben Davison. Okay, very calculated coach, not a risk-taking coach, safety first. And I believe, I really truly believe, and I've looked at it so many ways to how Joshua would approach this fight. And I believe he'll box on his back foot initially and try and pick off Ngannou. And should he at any point hurt him, then he'll move into range and conclude the fight. That's how I say. That is the only way I believe he can fight this fight. He wouldn't dare. And I don't think Ben's not like that. He's more. He's very, like I said, very meticulous in the way he approaches fights, game plans, and I believe that's the strategy they will use is try and sting him, sting it. Go back to the amateur days, the tactics that won Joshua the Olympic gold. He has to
long range.
Refer back to the amateur style, in and out. And should you, like I said, which has got plenty of shots to hurt Ngannou, and then if he sees any signs, then should he go in and inflict more pain on Ngannou?
Yeah, I mean, Dan Hardy, the other side of the break there, Simon, former welterweight MMA fighter, made a great case for Ngannou, and I tuned in and I listened very carefully to what he said there. Everything changes if Ngannou can start getting through Joshua's guard.
Yeah. I mean, he would say that. It's a PFL fighter. It's one of his fighters, so he's going to be in the camp of Ngannou. I mean, if Anthony Joshua goes in and does his job, then ultimately this should not be a difficult fight for him. If he wants to make it difficult for himself by getting into situations where he highlights Ngannou's strengths, then he'll make it difficult for himself. I wanted to ask Don about the billing of Knockout Chaos. Do you expect, as a result of this fight, that we're going to see a knockout? You've got two guys that hit very hard. But we're talking about Anthony Joshua using and engaging his brain to box him at distance and take opportunities when they come, which may not come. He may box him out, at length and just win it on an easy points victory. But do you expect to see someone get knocked out in this fight?
The percentages are high of a knockout when you got these two guys. And knowing Anthony, his mentality, how I know him, if the fight's going well for him, he will go look for that knockout. And then Ngannou, the only way he's going to win this fight is by knocking Anthony Joshua out. And so that's why the percentages are high in there being a knockout in this fight.
But given what you know about the strategic thinking of Ben Davison, and given what we know potentially about some of the limitations of Ngannou, do you ultimately expect to see a knockout? If you were putting a bet down, would you bet on a knockout?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what? This is what makes this fight so fascinating, though. That if Anthony Joshua gets too greedy and he sits there too long, he gets and gets clipped, then the fight changes around very, very quickly. So you have to give Ngannou that respect. That's what makes the fight intriguing.
Yeah. I don't know which way to go now. After listening to Dan Hardy and now listening to you, Don. But I suppose this is why they're staging a fight like this.
Absolutely.
To such a large extent, we're all into the unknown again, aren't we?
Absolutely. And look,
nobody thought Ngannou would put Fury in the seat of his pants.
Exactly. I mean, look where we are. Initially, when he was going to fight Fury and Ngannou, it was being billed as, or talked about, it's a gimmick fight.
Right, exactly.
Right. No one's saying that now.
No.
With Anthony Joshua.
We're
this is a
taking him for
serious
real.
fight.
Yeah.
It's a serious.
We're taking him
so
seriously.
The industry have recognised, embraced Ngannou, and we're talking about him seriously. So,
but is it not a testament, a slightly pointed question, to how good these heavyweight champions are? Because, you've got the elite heavyweight champions that have got, with respect, yes, he can fight. We know he can fight because of the sport that he's in. But he's not fought, boxing fights in a competitive fashion. He's not fought for 18 months. He's had a knee rebuild. And he goes and makes the generational great heavyweight Tyson Fury look pretty average. And now we're talking about him potentially giving actually, what does this say about the elite heavyweights in our division right now?
Well, I don't think it could, when I said discredit Ngannou's efforts. In life, it's almost like, I'll give you a football analogy, for instance. I won't bore you. You get a second division side gets drawn against a Premiership side in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah. That second division side will give the Premiership, usually they do, a nightmare, torrid time. Right. Then you think, excuse me, why don't you play like that every week? You won't be in the second division. So Ngannou, if you look at it like that, if you get a top 15 heavyweight, for instance, and put him up against Ngannou, who's to say he'll be up for it? He's been put on a stage where the whole world is watching him. So it's almost like a performance of a lifetime. He's going to have to do it twice.
What would you expect Daniel Dubois to do to someone like Ngannou?
Like Ngannou, exactly what, I'm not a hypocrite, exactly the same approach I would use on him. I believe he's going to come on to Joshua, and I believe he'll come on to Daniel, just like Baby Miller did. You got to sting him on the way in, hurt him, then look to put him on his back foot. Depending on how the fight is going, you look to put him on their back foot.
But if you look back on that fight against Tyson Fury, right, and there's a lot of talk about Fury and his preparations and he's underperforming, etc. But you look at Francis Ngannou and break Francis Ngannou down. The guy can fight. He boxes orthodox southpaw. Actually, what he lacks in speed, he made up for in timing. He punched when Fury punched. He outfought the guy that is known as the best boxing IQ in the game today. So I think that it's taking a lot of credit away. I know that it's the first fight.
I'm not taking any credit away from Ngannou.
No, but
I'm saying
take the credit away from the heavyweights.
As good as we crack them up to be.
No,
what I'm saying.
Perhaps
Ngannou
might just be as good as the good heavyweights of today.
No,
there's that argument.
Trust me, the heavyweights, the crop of heavyweights we have currently around the world, they are very, very good. It's just you got one individual.
But you lot make me die. You sit there talking about, if he hasn't had a back catalogue of amateur fights and he's not good enough to be in this. Now,
Who said that?
A guy can walk. You all do.
No,
actually, Joshua.
This is a one-off.
Actually,
there is such a thing.
A significant position, but don't forget, he's not had an enormous amount of experience because he's done amateur fights. Now you're making a case for a guy that's had no fights in the professional boxing world to be a world beater. And you're refusing to accept that maybe the top 10 heavyweight fighters ain't that great.
He's a one-off. How many Ngannous? He's a one-off. I guarantee you that. He's a one-off. and no one's ever done it. This is the first time in the history of the sport that I believe this is.
Don, before we hit the break, let me ask you this, and you can keep it short. Does Joshua knock Ngannou out tomorrow?
Most if you ask me, I don't bet, but if I was to put a pound on it, I will put my pound on Joshua
To knock him out?
Most definitely. He's a human being and he breathes oxygen.
But again, as Simon said, we thought Fury would do that.
We did, but he was an unknown at the time in Ghana.